located outside the village and will be comprehensively landscaped with very limited views both inwards and outwards. Residents will not notice that it is there, so the suggestions that it will change the look and feel of the village are unfounded. We would also like to refer members to a letter written by Swanwick Parish Reverend Carol Lloyd. In this letter she addresses much of the objections that you've heard today and actually feels as though the application actually carries some, what she describes as unpopular support from within the village. Incidentally, we have built 6 of these schemes across the country, and we have never received a complaint once it has been up and running. Quite the opposite, in fact. It is seen as a very good neighbour that becomes a source of pride to the local community. I would like to conclude by saying that your officers have considered this application for 11 months. They have taken this long because they have shown great respect for both the Parish Council and local resident objections. Their recommendation for approval has been reached after extensive assessment of all the same arguments you've heard today. We hope therefore that you will respect their recommendation and approve this application, as the impact on the locals in reality will be minimal, but the benefit to the wider community will be significant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Roger Jepson, supporter.
Chair. I'm Roger Jepson, independent funeral director, and our family firm has offices in Matlock, Wirksworth and Belvedere. I do want to talk about need because I do get embarrassed in busy periods when we have to.
Thank you.
When we have to say to families, the funeral won't be able to take place for over 2 weeks. And this has happened on a regular basis. So there is definitely need for another crematorium in this area. If I can just give you some examples, because of course, if we then suggest another crematorium to the family, we've got extra mileage to go. So our office in Matlock, we would normally use Chesterfield Crematorium, that's 9 miles away. The alternative would be to try Derby, which is 18 miles away. Swanwick would be only 9. From Wirksworth, we traditionally use Mark Eaton Crematorium at Derby, which is 13 miles. The alternative there would be to ask if there's any space left at Chesterfield, which is 16 miles. Swanwick would only be 10. Our office in Belper again traditionally uses Mark Eaton Crematorium in Derby. That is 8 miles. We normally suggest after that trying at Bretby. That is 18 miles away. Swanwick would be only 7. This has been happening now for several years, where we've had this problem of long waits for funerals. It's bad enough for a family to wait a week, 10 days, but to go over 2 weeks, in my opinion, is unacceptable. It's too long for a family to wait. And I'm talking from experience, not any fancy figures, just real experience on the ground. And that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chris Mitra, planning agent.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to start with something that I'd already prepared, but obviously having heard a lot of comments today, I feel it's important that we highlight a number of points for members this evening. Fundamentally, I think it's the issue of understanding the policy EN1 and EN5, because the two have to be read together. Your officers have very clearly assessed that and come to a view, and that view in the report is that the proposal does not conflict with either of those policies. When Mr. Lomas spoke, I thought for a moment we might actually get some common sense response as to the assessment of the policy, because everybody seems to be misunderstood as to what the policy actually says. But clearly Mr. Lomas hasn't even read the policy either.
Can you not personalise it, please?
Thank you, I won't, sorry sir. If I read policy EN1 to you, it says, in the countryside, outside the built framework of settlements, new development will only be permitted where it is essential in conjunction with the requirements of agriculture or forestry, is necessary within the countryside and cannot be reasonably located within an existing settlement, or will improve the viability, accessibility or community value of existing services and facilities. Policy EN5, to which the land at Somercotes applies, so the land at Alfreton applies, states that the area of land between Alfreton, Somercotes and Swanwick, shown on the proposal's map, will be protected from built development to ensure maintenance of the settlement's separate identities. Fundamentally, it then says, planning permission will not be granted except for development which meets the criterion policy EN1. So nowhere does it say in either of those policies that development is not permitted within the gap. The gap was defined and set in the local plan, as residents have indicated, for a very specific purpose. But for planning purposes, it's not there to prevent development from happening. Development that respects the openness of that gap is permitted. And that's what this proposal does. It respects the openness of that gap by maintaining at least 85% of the site open in character. Now, your officer's report addresses issues of landscape impact, highway concerns, ecology, archaeology and the like. And no objections have been raised in those regards. Your policy officer, your principal policy officers don't have any objection to the proposal with regard to that. So this is what it comes down to. It's an assessment effectively of whether this development proposal complies with that particular
30
policy.
seconds.
In our opinion, it does. In the opinion of your officers, it does. And that's the key material point to bear in mind. That policy is in place at the present time. By March 2013, the National Planning Policy Framework takes precedent over local plan policies that are out of date, and the policy will be out of date by then. This proposal complies with the National Planning Policy Framework in terms of sustainability. You've heard evidence in terms of reduced journey distances, over 386,000 miles saved in journey time. So we hope you would support your officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Mark Hogg, resident of Swanwick.
Chair. Well, the applicant's agent has just talked about assessment. So Roger Tim and partners were commissioned to assist the understanding the issues in relation to quantitative need. That's an assessment. I would like you to look at this report. Firstly, the drive time catchment analysis. Quotes, for the last year for which figures were available, 2000, approximately 437,000 cremations took place in the UK, which represented 70.9% of funerals. However, the figures are available right up to 2010, and provisional figures for 2011. I have these figures here. These show a distinctly different picture, a reduction in the overall number of cremations. This report perpetrates misleading information. The tables on pages 12 to 14 projects figures of deaths in the catchment area up to 2033. In all the tables, the deaths remain constant, 1,494 for all years. The predicted number of cremations in 2033 is 1,588. Worrying when, within the catchment area, will the extra 94 bodies come from? According to the Cemetery Research Group at the University of York, the UK already has one of the highest cremation rates in the world, and this rate is unlikely to increase unless cremation is made compulsory. Pages 15 state there are only 5 crematoria servicing Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire: Mansfield, Markeaton, Chesterfield, Bramcott, Nottingham, Sheffield and Bretby. I'll make that 7. Finally, the report acknowledges, against Mr Hodgson's earlier assertions, much of the population identified in this catchment area is closer to another crematorium. So the actual population which the proposed crematorium could be expected to serve is much smaller. Despite such glaringly obvious statements, the report still comes to the conclusion to support the application. Surely one must question the analysis on the journey times, mileage savings, environmental benefits and quantitative need. The brief issued to the consultant only related to a review of the information submitted by the applicant in relation to the need and was not intended to give the council its own need of assessment. This calls into question the whole review. If not to provide an unbiased and correct information, what then was its purpose? Dismiss the evidence in this report as unreliable and irrelevant and refuse this application.
Thank you. Mr. David Kerford, agent Thorntons.
Chair, councillors, My name is David Kirkwood. I'm a town and country planning consultant and an external advisor on planning matters for Thorntons PLC. I won't be
Can you
speaking.
speak up a bit, please?
That's the first time anyone said I'm quiet.
I do fear, Mr. Chairman, that the hearing of some of us is getting rather aged. Please
I'll try to speak and not you.
just start again, please, and
Okay.
try and vocalise a bit. Please.
So,
I can hear you all right, but I know they can't.
thank you very much, Chair. Councillors, my name is David Kirkwood. I'm a town and country planning consultant and I'm an external planning advisor to Thorntons PLC. I won't be speaking specifically in respect of Thorntons today. It is more to do with the generalised issues, basic principle on planning matters. Many of the issues have already been raised by other objectors, so I'll try to be brief and keep to the basics. Cut most of this out. In essence, we have assessed the proposal and we're of the view that it should be refused by the committee as contrary to the policies and objectives of the adopted local plan, but also against the principles of good settlement planning. Members will be aware that the proposal is a departure from the policies of the local plan and represents non-essential development within the open countryside. Now, we do take the point that...
Your voice has gone soft again, mate.
It's gone soft again?
You'll have to keep
Good Lord.
You'll have to speak up.
Stand in the middle.
Stand in the middle.
Would you like?
Closer.
Come close.
He needs to get heard because he wants to.
Chair, can you start again, Chair?
No, I think it's good.
No,
We're fine. I'm sure people are aware of where we are. Is that any better, folks?
Yeah.
Jolly good. Thank you. Members will be aware that the proposal is a departure from these policies of the local plan and that it represents non-essential development within the open countryside. The local development plan provides a basis for the determination and accessibility of development control proposals and also planning applications. Within the plan, 2 levels of protection have been conferred to the borough's open countryside areas through the development management policies. These policies, as have been restated by a number of people, are policies EN1 and EN5. EN1 was developed to ensure that only essential uses, such as farming, forestry, fishing, and some forms of leisure use are located within the countryside as they are appropriate in both setting and in character. Not necessarily built form per se, but open countryside collections. This protection has been overlaid by policy EN5, of which I'm sure you're very much aware, and that was developed with a specific aim of protecting the openness of land between the settlements of Alberton, Sunnycross and Swanwick, to maintain the well-defined settlement boundaries to purposely exercise and prevent the merging of the towns through incremental development. Now, departure from these policies by allowing development should always be considered very carefully. Any new decision may set a precedent which reduces the authority's ability to resist future applications in the countryside. This is a protected area, and it's a very small protected area. It will become quite difficult to resist future applications which are of a similar nature, provide similar growth, and as Mr. Lomas has already alluded to, may allow the arguments and justifications for further economic or residential development, and so create the merger of the towns which we've been trying to avoid. We've considered the detail of the proposal, and it's apparent that aside from conflict with matters of basic principle, the applicant's approach to site selection has been somewhat ill-considered.
30 seconds.
Okay. All of the alternative sites selected and dismissed by the applicant are similar agricultural fields outside of settlement boundaries. No attempt appears to have been made to identify alternative sites which would not have such a significant impact on local planning policy. If we accept the applicant's assertions that the development will have no detrimental impact on either residential or community or commercial amenity, then citing the proposal within an existing developed area should have been the first and most obvious choice on the basis on which site selection has been made. Moreover, the development plan provides for cemetery
That's it,
expansion.
sir. You've had 3 minutes.
Okay,
Including
Thank
the
you very
time
much
it took
indeed.
you to get round there. We started the clock.
that's very good of you.
Right, Mr. Jonathan Hart, Chief Executive Thorntons. Oh, you've got a good strong voice.
I have indeed.
Oh, yes.
Chairman, councillors, good evening. I'm the Chief Executive of Thorntons PLC. I felt compelled to attend this meeting to forcibly reiterate my very real concerns about this proposed development. We retained professional planning advisors, of whom I asked some pretty straightforward questions. And after I'd asked the questions, I was told, 1, that the land in question is protected from development, 2, the proposal is contrary to the local planning policy, and 3, that the council's objectives to support existing employers and local economic development has been ignored. So why am I here? It's because this inappropriate development has, quite simply, should never have got this far. The nature of the development is clearly contrary to everything the authority is trying to achieve in the area, and the creation of just 4 jobs is scant justification for such a significant departure from the council's planning, policies and principles. So I hope we can rely on the council members to make the right decision and to reject the application. Thank you for allowing me to express the opinions of the authorities.
Thank you. Mrs. Sylvia Mason. 3 minutes, please.
Good evening.
Evening.
I'm not going to say very much. The Swanwick group and the Thornton people and everybody on this side of the room have already said pretty much of it. I will, however, state that Amber Valley SOS are backing Swanwick 100% on this. Again, it's more destruction of greenfield land to the east of the A38 in Amber Valley. This gentleman here said about wanting somewhere near a matlock. I suggest you build somewhere near a matlock, because Amber Valley are building on every blade of grass they can find east of the A38. And we might be able to save this little bit if the Amber Valley Planning Board decide to reject it, please.
Thank you. Mrs. Leslie Dale.
Hello. Only part of the Cremation Act 1902 is quoted to support the siting of the crematorium. The applicant claims it is difficult to locate a crematorium within an urban area, as they must satisfy the Act. The Act only requires that no crematorium shall be constructed nearer to any dwelling house than 200 yards, except with the consent in writing of the owner, lessee and occupier of such a house, nor within 50 yards of any public highway, nor in the consecrated part of the burial ground of any burial authority. This is not completely prohibitive, difficult but not impossible. This does not automatically mean that the development is necessary in the countryside. Difficulty does not override the saved policies in the 2006 adopted plan or meet the criterion in EN1B. Find the right settlement. No other settlement was tried. The Cremation Act 1902 also provides the following definition. The expression crematorium shall mean any building fitted with appliances for the purpose of burning human remains and shall include everything incidental or ancillary thereto. Incidental or ancillary thereto includes everything that will be introduced to the site as a result of this proposal for a crematorium, and including where cremated remains can be buried. All the memorial gardens, flat stone burial areas, glade, woodland and natural burial areas, associated footpaths, even the viewing seating area. This is confirmed in the Department of Environment Guidance 1978 LG 123236 on the Cremation Society website. It excludes ornamental gardens, carriageway and houses provided for staff. It is silent on car parks. The planning officer's comment, based on the definition of carriageway in the Highways Act 1980, agrees that car park cannot be classed as a carriageway. The car park is, therefore, incidental or ancillary to the crematorium. The planning officer has suggested that the built element satisfies the distance requirements. He does not comment on the elements that are incidental or ancillary thereto. You cannot simply separate the building from all the other incidental or ancillary elements simply because it is inconvenient. This is contrary to the definition in the 1902 Act and the DOE Guidance 1978. This is a material planning consideration. The board is being asked to determine the landscaping proposals that form part of the application.
30 seconds, please.
Thank you. Members are urged to seek council's advice before proceeding to determine this application. I ask you to refuse the application as it does not meet more than one of the criteria in the N1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Mr. Mark Hodgson.
Thank you.
Right, I'm a resident of Brackendale Road, which is very close to this proposed site. I'm an objector to this. My objection is very simple. It's the thin end of a wedge. Once this land has been developed, and it is a development, then the other two fields will then be open for development. Extension to the crematorium, more burial ground, lorry parks, storage units, housing possibly, factories, whatever. Because once it's broken, it becomes the reason for the next break, and the next field, and the next field. Then you have housing at Lily Street Park. Then you have housing at the other side of the A38 near Alfreton, near the Alfreton Golf Course. It just starts. And once it's broken, you cannot fix it. I think it's just the thin end of a wedge, and for that reason only, I think it should be objected and not happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, that was the final speaker, and just for clarification, everybody was taken in order as they came into the council chamber and had their names written down by the secretary, in case you thought there was any reason why it was in that order. Right, officers, no one to have a presentation.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, hang on.
I'm sorry.
I forgot to get first. I forgot about it. You just sat quietly like I asked you.
Chairman Jim and planning people. In my previous capacity as Cabinet Member for Regeneration, part of my role was to oversee the local plan and was privileged to work closely with the then Director of Planning, Mr. Colin Wisley. And we worked between us, worked on a strategy of a local plan development framework, to which some members and interested people of the different communities in the borough would discuss all the different aspects of the local plan with planning officers. And this, I may add, was a groundbreaking experience to develop over a considerable amount of time and meetings a local plan that was more akin to people's views and acknowledgements until the conclusions of the new local plan in 2006, as it was then. It was adopted, obviously, in 2006, and Mr. Wiesel and myself signed it off as it was a complete and usable document. And I do realise that it's coming to its end of its period of time, but it is still in use. This proposed site is a protected open space, the only one designated EN5. Okay, I appreciate that these people are villagers, just like I'm a villager of Swanwick. I proposed that the local plan be adhered to. I ask all planning members that they adhere to it, and please keep it a protected protected open space as it is intended. No development will only protect this open space. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're more than welcome, Councillor. Right, over to officers now for presentations.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome.
The first thing to note, I'm just going to talk very, very briefly about the site. I know members are familiar with the site. I think all but one of the planning board members attended the member site visit in the summer, and there was an opportunity to view the site from a number of vantage points, so members should be reasonably familiar with the site. Local residents and other interested parties, I'm sure, are familiar with the site as well, so I don't propose to spend an awful lot of time describing the site in detail, but I will clearly refer to a number of plans during the presentation to illustrate certain points. So that's just really a simple location plan showing the site. Apologies for it being at 90 degrees, but effectively the western side is at the bottom there, so you're looking sort of west to east there. Derby Road, B6179 running along the bottom of the screen there, from north to south, left to right. I think it's important to emphasise, and I'm very conscious of this with my background at Amber Valley, that this is a particularly sensitive part of the borough. It's an area that's been subject to a number of development proposals over the years, and that's been highlighted by one or two of the speakers. So inevitably, any proposal for development in that particular part of the borough is going to be sensitive and it's going to be controversial. And I think the number of representations we've received on the application and the breadth of the issues that have been raised by people, I think, illustrate that. So I think it's important to sort of note that at the start. But it's also important when members are considering this application that they focus on the relevant planning issues, and there are a number of planning issues that people have raised through representations, but as is often the case with a number of applications, there are other issues which have come forward and which aren't strictly planning issues, and issues of that nature members, I'm sure, are aware cannot be taken into account in the decision. So my presentation will try and highlight what I think are the key planning issues for you. Now, the starting point with, as with all planning applications, is the development plan. As members know, the development plan is the first planning consideration to be looked at as to whether a proposal is in conformity with or not in conformity with the development plan. And then there are other material planning considerations which will be relevant with planning applications that then will be considered alongside the development plan and weighed against what the development plan says. So that's again something that's familiar to members about how we need to consider these matters. So I'm firstly going to focus on the question of the principle of development. I'll talk a little bit later about some of the detailed elements of the proposal, but just focusing on, is this development acceptable or not acceptable in principle? Can you just show slide 8, please? Now that's an extract from the local plan. Again, a number of speakers have referred to the local plan, and there is a copy of the same extract over on the boards there. Now, just to highlight the site and the relevant policies, the field here, that's the application site. That was the site that was bounded by red on the previous plan. And what we call the protected open area, which is policy EN5, is the area hatched in green there. It extends from the access to Thornton's to the north here, to the east of Derby Road, down to Sleepmore Lane. It then goes across north of Sleepmore Lane towards Leabrooks, and then there's an area of land that separates the Thornton's development from further industrial development over to the east there. So that this protected open area, and also to the south here. So it's quite a large area, as members of the public will see. And its purpose is essentially to maintain the separate identities of Swanwick, Leabrooks, Somercotes, Riddings and the Alfreton area. So it's quite a long-standing policy. The particular policy that we have now has been amended slightly over the years, but essentially that area being protected as an open break is a long-standing policy, and it's one that the Borough Council has consistently supported. I think that needs to be highlighted. Now I'm going to come back and talk about EN5 and how this proposal, in our view, needs to be judged against the EN5 a little bit later. But I first want to draw members' attention to policy EN1. And if members can look at page 37 of the report, I'm going to talk in the report there about the principle of development through to page 39. So I'm just going to take you through that briefly. Policy EN1, as members know, is the countryside policy, and all proposals for development that come forward in the countryside, and we define in Amber Valley the countryside as anywhere outside the built framework of a settlement. And again, members will know we don't have lines on a plan necessarily to show where that is, but I think it's quite clear. I think no one would dispute that this location is within the countryside. It's